Hi there, and welcome to Baseball by Design. I am Paul Caputo, sportslogos.net minor league baseball correspondent, broadcasting live, as always, from the Helmet Sunday Hall of Fame in Fort Collins, Colorado. Today, we are going to talk about the Missoula PaddleHeads, who are one of the most fun new brands out there in the last few years, and they play up in Montana. I had the luxury of getting to see the PaddleHeads with many of my Twitter friends over the last summer on a road trip with my kids. It's an absolutely fun new brand, and it sort of took the world by storm right around when COVID was happening. So that's an interesting part of this story for sure. But I am joined by team president Matt Ellis right now. We're going to talk to Jason Klein of Brandiose a little bit later on, and we're going to talk with Henry Hunter, vice president of the Pioneer League. So, Matt, first of all, thank you for joining me. How are you?
I'm doing great, Paul. How are you? Thanks for having me on.
I'm doing really well. And yeah, I appreciate you coming and talking to me about the PaddleHeads. We've had several conversations before, primarily for sportslogos.net. When the brand was unveiled, I got to cover that and track the reaction to the switchover from the Missoula Osprey to the Missoula PaddleHeads. And, you know, we talked at the time that Osprey logo, people loved it in the community, but it was in need of an update. And so you worked with the folks of Brandiose, and you said, okay, we're gonna come up with something new and relevant to the area. And you've got this great moose-based theme here. So can you talk to me? This is a podcast about what minor league logos and nicknames mean to their communities. So can you talk to me about what does a paddlehead mean to Missoula?
Well, I wasn't 100% sure when we were first looking at it as one of our finalists, to be honest with you, because, you know, moose are prevalent in Montana, just maybe not in Missoula city proper, for example. So, you know, like 20 miles out in Rock Creek or 9 Mile, those places, you'll see a lot of moose. But we were at a point where we were actually on a call with Brandiose, and we were going over our 5 final names, and we got an Amber Alert on our phone that a baby moose and its mom was in the vicinity of downtown, and everybody was saying stay away because the moose is a pretty tough animal. So that was the relevance at that moment, and we all said that's a sign. This is going to be our name, Paddleheads, and it stuck from there on. The moose got saved and got put back into the wild, but it was only a block away from our office here downtown in Missoula. So it's kind of a crazy story. And, you know, we just asked, you know, well, what does a moose really fit Missoula? And then all of a sudden we get this Amber Alert.
Well, it's funny that you talk about the moose being sort of dangerous, right? Because they've, you know, maybe because of like Rocky and Bullwinkle, right? Like they have this sort of sense of, you know, they're sort of big and goofy and round looking, right? Like, and they don't look like that they could take you out, but you don't want to go near a moose if you see one walking down the street.
No, a lot of people think moose is a little more dangerous than a bear just because it's so aggressive when it sees you. So we you know, that was one of the things in our brand is we were working with Brandiose on having a you know, mascot that didn't scare kids, but also, you know, look competitive, look tough. So that we were trying to find that mix so that you don't look like a wimp on the field, you know, but at the same time, you want the kids to embrace it. So.
Sure. Well, I think a moose fits the bill, and this moose of yours has that Brandiose grimace, right? Like he's gritting his teeth. Right. This is an audio medium here, so you know, I just gritted my teeth and talked through my clenched mouth. So that's great. That's great audio podcasting technique right there. The brand itself is, and I'll talk to Jason of Brandiose about this, but the brand itself is a pretty large suite of logos that tell a lot of different stories. The primary thing that you are doing seems to be this focus on Montana. Much of the Pioneer League, well, you've got the Great Falls Voyagers, the Billings Mustangs, and then the Missoula PaddleHeads.
Yeah, and then we just added Glacier to as an excuse team. So
the Range Riders, of course. And then I, of course, will have the Northern Colorado Owls with a Z right around the corner from where I live in Fort Collins, Colorado. Exactly. So yeah, so you've got the 4 teams in 2022 playing in Missoula, but the brand, the PaddleHeads brand, really focuses on, you know, Montana. There's one logo that has the state outline, and so there seems to be a real focus on we're going to be Montana's team here. That obviously was intentional.
Yeah, it was, but it was really about lifestyle, and you know, we spent time with Brandiose and had some focus groups, and we didn't want a name that didn't relate to our community. In other words, we didn't just want to pick a fun, crazy name. that had really no relevance to this community. So we really based all of our logos off of lifestyles, whether it's, and local landmarks. Like we have the peace logo, which represents the iconic peace symbol that was on the mountains overlooking Missoula for years. We have the state logo because we did want to brand ourselves as a state entity. We have the moose fly fishing in that logo. We have the float logo where the moose is floating down the river, which you do right next to the ballpark and can do it to a game. So we tried to do as much of lifestyle stuff as we could to represent who Missoula is, what Missoulians are about. And I think we accomplished that pretty good. In fact, our next set of logos as we evolve is going to do more lifestyle type stuff.
Your next set of logos, is this breaking news? When can we expect that?
Well, it's breaking news, but Jason will be excited to hear it when you tell him, because I haven't officially ordered it yet.
All right. Well, when I talk to Jason next, I'll be sure to break that news. So you mentioned the river, and you mentioned the fact that the ballpark's right there along the river. When I was there last summer,
right,
we stayed in a hotel that was on the river, and I always like to go for, I keep a list of all the states where I've been running. So,
right,
if any state where I've run at least 3 miles, I crossed off the list. And so I was, I had the opportunity to go for a run from the hotel to the ballpark, basically, and, sort of run around the ballpark. And I always like, even though I had just been to a double header the night before, it was sort of fun
right.
to, go along the river and see the ballpark there. But it's very much as you describe, right? Like you've got these beautiful mountains, you've got this beautiful
Right.
scene, you've got the river running right there. I just missed, I think, the float to the ball game.
Yeah.
So I didn't get to do that, although I don't know what I would have floated there in, but well, and the ballpark itself has this beautiful view of these mountains off to the right field side.
Right.
So it's really an idyllic view from a ballpark, one of the best I've seen. So you really embrace this sort of outdoorsy lifestyle of Missoula itself, which I really enjoy.
Yeah, and that's what Missoulians are about, and the ballpark's located downtown. It's right on the river, as you said. We actually have a boat launch that's in the parking lot, so people are coming out of the river during games from fishing, fly fishing all day, or floating. So our float to the ballpark is actually ends right at the stadium. They get out of the river and they go straight into the ballpark and go to the game and get a barbecue and that kind of stuff. So it's kind of a fun promotion. We also do like a river cleanup. So we're embracing the lifestyle of the river and downtown and all that. And it's like I said, it's been a real success for us in where we're located.
Well, and I even noticed during the game that, people were walking along the trail, they were just out and about on the trail. And it seems like it's pretty intentional that you don't really block people's view, right? If they're walking along the trail, they can actually see the ball game. They can stop and take in a batter or two as they're all out there on the trail. And so it was fun to see just people in the community stopping and watching a little bit of the ball game as they were out for a stroll.
Exactly. We did that intentional so that it was one of, the stadium was built in part by private donations and by a nonprofit locally that built it. And one of their aims was to make it to where people could sit on the grass hill in center field without having to pay for a ticket. And we're good with that because we know that the experience inside the ballpark is so much better than that experience out in the hill. So we're still going to have people coming in and not poach us, and it doesn't hurt us at all. It's actually a great community amenity to the ballpark.
Oh, for sure. Because I think it would just create this connection of hey, this is fun. Maybe I want to get in there and actually, buy some concessions and buy a t-shirt. And we did this. This was part of a road trip that we did last year where several of my friends who I only know through Twitter, I actually got to meet for the first time ever in person at a PaddleHeads game. So we have this great group photo of, Eric the Peanut Guy and Patrick Newton, Corey Nissen from baseballmapper.com, and too many to name. I always try to name everybody and I always leave someone out. So I feel bad. So, but, a bunch of us met at this game and it turned into a doubleheader because of a rain out the day before, which was sort of perfect. And then we sat up there on the concourse where they have the fire pits and, the tickets are not that expensive and they come with food. And so it was a great game experience. It was a really fun game experience. One of the things I remember about the ballpark, though, is the Osprey nest, which was the namesake for the original team, which played from 1999 essentially until 2019. It's sort of, when do you count the switchover? Was the switchover the COVID year of 2020, or do you count it as
We
2021?
technically announced in '99 on November, and then we lost our season of 2020
Right.
due to COVID. And then so the first time we wore a uniform was last season, even though we had announced 18 months prior. But yeah, the Osprey nest in center field is still there, and the birds have gotten and arrived here already for the summer, which is great. It's going to be an iconic part of our stadium forever, despite the fact that our official name isn't the Osprey anymore. But it was some of the hatred I got for changing the name. It was all centered around the nest, like, are you going to cut down the nest now? Or, what about the bird in center field? I mean, like the bird had, was really upset that we changed the name. So it was a challenge to get the word out that the nest was not going anywhere. In fact, we still wear the Osprey jerseys for 2 games this season, so we still embrace it. And it is pretty cool to see the bird catch a fish and then kind of show it off in the middle of the ballpark as fans are sitting there. He'll take a little lap, a victory lap, showing the fish that he caught before he takes it up to the nest for the mom and the chicks.
That's really cool. Well, Osprey are famously brand aware, so I'm sure the birds themselves are pretty annoyed that you made that change.
Yeah, there was a little bit more bird poop around the console, so maybe that was their sign.
They're making a statement on the new brand here. So, well, so you bring up the birds' reaction to the new brand, but what was the community's reaction to the rebrand?
Well, the Brandiose guys really prepped us well. So we were pretty understanding. We didn't believe it at first, but then once it happened, we said, oh, these guys are pretty smart. They know what they're doing. It was a total J curve. So they said it was going to be like a 2-month dip where you just had a lot of hatred. I needed some armed security for about 6 weeks. But all joking aside, it only lasted about a month in Missoula. I still have people that have not come back to the ballpark who said they will never come to a game again, which is kind of weird to me, but I respect that, I guess. But the love for the logo and the brand has far exceeded our expectations at the end of the day. So the J curve shot up very rapidly, and we sold hats in all 50 states and 7 countries within like 2 weeks. So it obviously resonates not just in Missoula, but worldwide.
Sure. Well, and I've learned about the J curve from talking with Jason from Brandiose about that, because it describes this reaction, this initial negative reaction to change, and then right. This process of embracing of a new thing. And so as it applies to minor league baseball branding, those guys have figured that out at Brandiose, right? Like they know.
They totally know. And you would thought we were doing something that impacted the world in a health way or something, because the amount of energy that was spent on being upset about the change when it was first announced was pretty impressive. So it does show how important these logos and these brands are to people, and that you have to do it right if you're going to change, because it does mean a lot to a lot of people.
Sure. I mean, there's nostalgia and there's connections, and that Osprey brand was around for 20 years. And, you can see that. I would think that the rebrand, at first, it seemed like it was really ill-timed because of COVID. You lost a season right after you announced the rebrand. I remember there was concern. The Pioneer League switched from an affiliated short season rookie level league to a Major League Baseball partner league, essentially unaffiliated independent league with some support from Major League Baseball. And there was some concern that after the rebrand and then losing a season to COVID and then the restructuring of minor league baseball, that we may not see the Paddleheads take the field.
And that was a concern, but the league really did a good job banding together. We started meeting weekly, right before the official announcement of the cuts, because we realized that the whole league was on the cut list. Mm-hmm. So we started meeting weekly, and we started working through scenarios and how this was going to play out. And we were really prepared when the time came, and we got moving pretty quick on this independent model, and it's really worked out well. All 8 teams, plus we added Boise for 9, and now you've got Glacier joining us this year for 10. not only did all 8 teams survive, but we've added 2 more teams. And I think all the markets are really strong right now and healthy. And we've got some great brands in this league. Glacier's new brand just adds to that cachet. So I'm excited about the future of the Pioneer League. It's a great league and great communities, and I think we came out of it pretty good.
Well, I mean, that's been a real relief to see, right? And I'm a minor league baseball fan, as you know, and I'm really excited that I'm sorry for the people of Orem, Utah, but I am very excited to have the now Northern Colorado Owls with a Z. They'll be playing right around the corner from me here in Fort Collins. Will you travel with your team? Will the Paddleheads play in Northern Colorado?
We're not playing in Northern Colorado this year, but I'm sure we'll be there at some point in the future. But our schedule doesn't take us there. So otherwise I'd come by and visit. I would, I'm looking forward to seeing their new facility and their new community down there. I think that's going to be a huge success in that area of Colorado.
Sure. Yeah, I hope so. I'm trying to build some buzz for it. I know people are talking about it here. I have one last question about the logo, and then I'll let you go. The decision to go with the term Paddleheads rather than Moose, especially when Missoula Moose has that alliteration there. Was there consideration of being the Moose, or was it always going to be a sort of nickname like Paddleheads for Moose?
No, it wasn't. We were pretty loyal to the Brandiose model, and we take their advice pretty serious because they're really good. And
sure.
And one of their things is that we were real big on an original name that nobody else had, and so Paddleheads became that as all my logos dropped.
We just had a sign come off the wall, like the Guardian's store sign when it fell.
My podcast staging just fell apart. So much for that studio. No, but so we really took it to heart that we wanted something that was original to Missoula. We want the brand to feel like it's a Missoula thing, and there's no paddlehead anywhere else that we know of. So that was kind of a cool side to our brand and our name, is that we kind of own it, and we don't have to have something that's generic like the Moose. Like the name Moose, and to battle it out with other people and stuff. It just made it to where it was ours, and it's our community's name.
Well, it's one that I really enjoy. People love Moose, and I'm glad to see that. I have a sense that the new brand actually sort of helped sustain the team a little bit through the COVID year, selling merchandise to people sort of everywhere. Because I know that it was after the initial J curve in Missoula, it was well received nationally. I think people really like sort of Moose based logos, right?
Yeah, it's a fun character to use, and I think Jason and I think they loved it at Brandiose in terms of the creativity they were able to have with the Moose. They did a really good job of, like I said, making it lovable but tough at the same time.
Well, it's one that I really enjoy, and I appreciate you coming on and talking about it for a little bit. Like I said, I'm going to talk with Jason, and then I'm going to talk with Henry Hunter next here. I do have to mention, by the way, that my oldest child is just about to start at Gonzaga.
Oh, awesome.
So I'm going to be, she'll be a freshman at Gonzaga next year. And so I'm going to be driving from Fort Collins to Gonzaga during baseball season a few times here. So I expect I'm going to find my way back to Missoula for another baseball game.
We hope so. We're big fans of you guys. I mean, Sammy B, our on-field entertainment host and our director of promotions and entertainment here. We call him the director of WOW. He's he is like a huge disciple of your website and everything you guys do. He's one of your biggest fans. So we appreciate all you do, and we'd love to entertain you again here in Missoula, because it's a great place, and that's great that she's at Gonzaga. You're only 2.5 hours away.
That's what I'm thinking. And it's, I haven't looked at the exact route, but I'm thinking it's right on the way, right? I got to, right. Stopping in Missoula will not be difficult. So, well, Matt, thank you very much. I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me, and look forward to covering the Pioneer League as you enter into the second year as a Major League Baseball partner league.
Again, thanks again, Paul. We really appreciate all the work you do, and we look forward to seeing you this summer.
I will do everything that I can to get there. Well, one last question. The paddleheads are easy to find online. Are you on social media anywhere where people can find you?
Yeah, so we're at Go Paddleheads. And if you go to our website, you can get on Twitter. We're on Facebook. We're on Instagram. We do the whole gamut. And we've got a pretty strong social presence, and our Wes Harton, our marketing and social media guy, does an amazing job. So I encourage people to go there. We also have a store downtown. It's paddleheadpost.com. So if people want to check out our logo and our brand and some of our Montana gifts in that store as well.
Perfect. Matt, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thanks for the shameless plug.
Hey, that's, it's part of the deal, right? Like, we want people to go find you. We want to support all these teams. So, all right. Thank you, Matt. Good luck this season.
Hey, appreciate it, Paul.
All right. Welcome back, everyone. Once again, very pleased to be talking with my friend, Jason Klein of the prolific design firm Brandiose, the premier.
We're back.
You're back. Here we are
back.
again.
I'm back. You're always here, Paul. I'm back.
Well, that's true. I'm always here on the podcast, but what a thrill again to be talking with you guys.
Oh, I love this. It's so fun. I always like coming on and telling the behind the scenes stories, and I'm super stoked for this one.
Well, it's fun for me too. And this is one, the Missoula Osprey were around for a long time. That brand at least needed an update, and then the team ended up going with a full rebrand. And you obviously worked with them on that process and came up with a moose-based theme. And who doesn't love moose, right? Like, everybody loves moose here. So there's a lot to get into here. First of all, because there's like 9 different logos for this team. There's a lot of different logos for this team, all part of this suite that you created.
Yeah.
The nickname Paddleheads, something that Brandiose is particularly good at, is coming up with terms like sea unicorns instead of narwhal, and sod poodles instead of prairie dogs. And so Paddleheads, the term, and then the moose-based logo, and then all of this deep dive into Montana. There is a lot going on in this logo. And I have to say, just sort of on a personal note, I'm really thrilled that the team survived the Vogon Destructor Fleet reshuffling of minor league baseball, and that the Pioneer League has thrived as an independent MLB partner league. So, because there was some concern, it was basically this brand was unveiled right before we lost a season to COVID, and then minor league baseball was reshuffled. So there was real concern here that this was one of the teams that we might just never see this new brand on the field. So So I want to start by saying
I'm glad it did, because it was a fun project.
Totally fun project. Well, so let's start with, where's the name Paddleheads come from? How'd you guys come up with that?
So we landed in Missoula, and it was winter. Snow was everywhere. It's gorgeous. If you've been to Missoula, it is like everything that you would expect from like the Montana. It is amazing, right? It's a total hippie town. It's a college town. It's sort of got it rhymes with like a Eugene, if you will. So it's got like a hippie vibe to it, and it's outdoors. I mean, everything is outdoors. They got the river going through the riverfront. Everything is all about the outdoors. And one of the things that we got to do is we got to go to more and more we're going to these history museums on our travels, and seeing, it was like, there's like taxidermy and that sort of thing. And I remember we were in a history museum in Missoula, and there's taxidermy, there's a moose. And we were like, man, you know what? Man, the moose is like a thing. And, there's like moose crossing and moose. We're like, man, we could really own moose, because one of the things as a brand, if you can own that mental real estate, that subject matter, that's super powerful. Like, one of the things that we think about is, how do we own that, name another Chihuahua brand or another shrimp brand. Like, if we can own the real estate, that's incredibly powerful. And there have been some moose stuff in the past in sports, but nobody's really taken ownership. We felt like, wow, that's great. And one of the reasons that that was so great was there's actually another team name that we had that was like really good. And not I don't want to say it was better than Paddleheads, but it had a Trash Pandas kind of vibe to it. And ultimately it was not family friendly when we Urban Dictionary'd it. And now Urban Dictionary is never like sometimes Urban Dictionary says something and you're like, yeah, it's fine. But just the way that this one came off in Urban Dictionary, we're like, we can't do it. So it was slang for a moose. That was originally what we were thinking about. And so we said, all right, we can't do that. It's got too many problems. But we did like this idea of the paddlehead as a slang, and the paddlehead was a term. Actually, the team came up with that. So, sometimes we come up with the names. Sometimes, the suggestions come up from the fans. Sometimes they're inspired by fans. Sometimes they're inspired by team. So, when we had the name the team contest. I'm talking earlier in the process. We're like, okay, the moose would be a great idea. Let's put that in the mix. And there were other names, great names that were put in the mix. But I think that the slang for the, someone submitted moose. We're like, oh, how can we make this sort of switch it up and make it minor league fun? And then, so we're like, okay, we need a moose name in the mix. And it wasn't going to be this other one, but somebody on staff said, I think it was Kim on staff said, like, what about the paddleheads? And I was like, ooh, the paddleheads. And outdoors, especially river-focused activity is huge in Missoula. So floating the river, I think you can even surf in the river, but definitely, kayaking, all of that like river activity in the summer, that is like a big Missoula thing. And so we had this idea of, oh, well, paddleheads could, obviously, is slang for a moose. But when you think of a paddlehead, in the same way, like if you're a gym rat or a pizza rat, right? The idea that you're a fanatic about this activity. If you're fanatic about gyms, you're a gym rat. If you're fanatic about pizza, you're a pizza rat. If you're fanatics about outdoors and paddling and kayaking, you're a paddlehead. And so that was like this idea we could take two worlds, which is nature and Montana, and then the outdoor activity, and bring it all together. And so that was where it all came from. And we were just, it was like, let's tell the story of Montana. Let's be Montana's brand. Let's celebrate everything about Montana. So, early on we had the moose, then the paddle in the mouth, the paddle stuck in the antlers, junk, stuck in the antlers. Does it float in the river? So that was, the early sketch concepts. Pretty quickly we got into digital. And the early concepts, we knew we were probably going to have a green, and we wanted to do something that was green and outdoors. We looked at like neon green and, sort of forest green. The other thing too is we knew that brown, moose are brown. And we thought, man, is there a way to like, sort of like make it just sort of dirty? So like sort of Texas orange came in early. And so that was sort of playing down the, one route was going down color and trying to figure out what this is going to look like. The other thing too was we were working on the lettering. How do we say paddleheads? And one of the slang terms for Missoula, Zootown. And nobody really cornered the market on Zootown merchandise. So every city has its own slogan or nickname, but, and you might call it, the Big Apple, that sort of thing. Here in San Diego, we're America's finest city, but like no one's, cornered the market on the Zootown slogan. So we thought, well, if we could retail and own and create really cool merchandise for Zootown, that would be a thing. So we knew paddleheads had to be created. Zootown was lettering that had to be created. And as I shared, Missoula is like a real hippie town. So we were like, can we create a lettering or a font or a typeface that feels like 1 foot in Major League Baseball, right? So it feels like a traditional Major League Baseball lettering, and then the other in this like psychedelic realm of the 1960s and, sort of a Grateful Dead vibe. So that became the sort of the lettering path. Over time, we looked at different colors. We looked at, we forget the greens. We looked at blues because there was a water element. The idea of doing neon too felt really interesting. And so we had neon green. Ultimately, we wound up doing a reversal and flipped to neon orange. And neon orange became, a color. And then, marks that we're developing. We had marks where the antlers or the M has antlers. We had the state the state of Montana where there's like a fly fishing moose out there. And so, yeah, it was just a fun project to be able to tell the story of Montana and celebrate it in so many different ways with so many different icons.
Sure. Well, and, just looking at the suite of logos as a whole, right? I mean, you've got the one that has you referenced it, the state of Montana as an outline, and the prominent feature in that one is the river and the fish, and the stadium's right there on the river. I actually went to a game there last year on a road trip with my kids. Yeah, we stayed right down the river, and then the next morning I went for a run along the path on the river and found myself at the baseball stadium, and I'm like, well, this is perfect. But so you've got the river right there by the ballpark, which is great. The moose character himself is really fun because I in my day job, I work with a lot of people who are naturalists, right? And they deal a lot with the flora and fauna out there in the world. And moose are always a problem in terms of communicating with the public, because everyone just thinks of, they think of, they look friendly and round and sort of goofy and approachable, and everyone wants to go like scratch them on the nose. And a moose will wreck you, right? Like a moose in the wild will wreck you, and they tell you to stay away. I've been in places in Colorado where, like a moose is walking down the street basically. And I know that happened in Missoula when they were renaming the team as well. But this moose character that you created, right? Like you've got the grimacing moose sort of coming up out of the water, but you also have the sort of happy-go-lucky moose paddling on an inner tube down the river, right? So it's, you've captured sort of both sides, the public perception of the friendly round moose, but then the sort of more real perception of, or the reality of the moose that you do not want to mess with because it will trample you to death. So
yeah, and that was by design, because when you're designing a cap, you want to be able to, you want to be a quick read, as I've shared before. You want to be a quick read, and you want to be able to tell the story in 80 millimeters with the least amount of extra information. If it's not necessary, if it doesn't, if it's not necessary, like remove it. So we had this idea that the moose could be in the water. That was interesting to us. And this idea of sort of to make it minor league and fun, you need this tension to exist in the design, and this tension between sort of the, okay, you have this moose who's got like baseball and fishing gear tied up in the antlers, which is sort of goofy and silly and fun. And then the sort of tenacity of the character. And that duality is what makes it a fun minor league cap. Whereas, so we knew that, like, if it was, because we looked at versions like, well, should be smiling on the cap. It's like, well, the smiling with the goofiness is a little over the top. The tension exists when you create the tenacity with the gear caught up in the antlers. Whereas, to your point, when the moose is in the inner tube, it's just fun, right? We're like, it's not the primary cap, it's a secondary logo. It's about fun, floating the river. So it's a different version. And once we got the other thing was the idea of a paddlehead. We're like, okay, well, what is it in? Is it a kayak? The kayak's gonna be complicated and long, and it's gonna take up a lot of real estate. Whereas an inner tube, short, compact. And so we knew that the moose was gonna be floating in an inner tube. And being like this fun hippie town, we had this idea of like, what if we took the inner tube and put two broken paddles in a way that we could create a peace symbol. Right. So there's this awesome peace symbol that is an inner tube with a single broken paddle down, vertical, and then a broken paddle to make the, sort of the legs of the peace symbol. And then you got all the, the gear up in there. So we wanted this, feeling, as I'm looking at the identity, there's something that's very minor league. There's something that's real hippie. There's something that's real, all in outdoors, all in Montana. And then the uniforms, we have this like awesome, like specifically designed PaddleHeads tie-dye uniform, where we were able to create this alternate jersey where because of the magic of design, the magic of computer design, the tie-dye sort of like explodes out from the left chest, and you have that peace symbol over the left chest of the tie-dye, and then boom, it explodes outwardly and radiates across the uniform. So this one was so fun.
It is fun. And I got to go to it was actually a double header that we went to last year, because they got rained out the day before. So we got very lucky. We got to spend a long time hanging out at this beautiful ballpark with this amazing view. One of my favorite details about the paddling moose is that he's wearing Birkenstocks, which is,
right.
I enjoy that very much. Another detail that I really like is when you zoom in on the eye of the moose, that the reflection in his eyeball is mountains of Montana.
Yes.
And that's a great detail because that features prominently there at that ballpark for sure.
Yeah, and this is one of my favorites because it does a lot, right? I mean, obviously there's several marks, but you're trying to accomplish a lot, which is, okay, we're trying to do moose, we're trying to do Montana outdoors, we're trying to do hippie town, and we're trying to do all these other things, which is tell a story in 80 millimeters or less. Trying to put Easter eggs in there, like you said, the little Easter eggs of the reflection of the mountains, the Birkenstocks, and it's got to be a minor league logo. It's got to, the jerseys have to feel major league. There has to be all these elements. So I'm really proud of this one that our entire team worked on to be able to bring it to life, because it does, you're trying to thread a needle all the time when you're doing these projects, and you're trying to balance it by telling a story and the restrictions and the challenges and the demands of a minor league identity. And yeah, this one's fun.
As always, Jason, I appreciate you coming by and telling the behind the scenes story on the work that you guys do and the thinking that you have on this. As always, Brandiose can be found on all the socials and online by searching their name, Brandiose. And so, Jason, thank you so much. I appreciate you coming by.
My pleasure. This is so fun. Yeah.
Thanks, Jason.
Bye.
All right, everyone. I'm very happy to welcome back to the program Henry Hunter, who is the Executive Vice President for the Pioneer League. Obviously, as we've mentioned, the Missoula PaddleHeads are a Pioneer League team. I mentioned last month on the podcast when we were talking about the Idaho Falls Chuckers that Henry and I sort of met fortuitously at a Great Falls Voyagers game around this time last year. Henry, it's great to see you again, and I'm looking forward to talking more about the paddleheads and the Pioneer, the growing and expanding and technologically savvy Pioneer League.
Awesome. Yes, happy to be here, Paul. Always a pleasure to get catch up with you.
First of all, you were traveling with your children and your dad, right, during that road trip last year when we ran into each other.
I was with my dad and my older sister, and Mike Shapiro, our league president, was with his wife and two sons. So it was a big family affair.
Okay, that's right. I knew there was a large group, and it had people of all ages. So that looked like a great time when we ran into each other in Great Falls there. Talking today about the Missoula PaddleHeads, who are one of a handful of teams in the Pioneer League to have gone sort of full wacky with their logos. As we mentioned last month on the podcast, you and I are both from the East Coast, so we probably don't have a lot of experience with moose necessarily. But in your travels around the Pioneer League to visit the stadiums, have you run into many moose?
I did, because you can't travel the Pioneer League without crossing through Yellowstone. You'd be remiss to skip that part of the road trip. And now we have Glacier National Park on our road trip as well. But I didn't get the double entendre until I got there, and I'd been thinking about a paddlehead. I thought it was cool. I thought it was a great play on the moose. And then I get to Missoula, and I'm going to the game, and there's this gorgeous river that literally went from the back of our hotel to the left field fence. And they've done promotions now where the players and the mascot and other people float down the river to the game. And it just clicked for me, like, oh, a paddlehead, I get it now. And suddenly, Brandiose's work, the company, their ad agency that came up with that, who also came up with the Glacier Range Riders, it all clicked for me. And I was like, oh, this is even cooler than I thought. No, so I ended up buying my son literally a paddlehead, the little foam paddlehead thing they had. I will say that the paddles lasted about 3 hours before he ripped one off.
Yeah.
But it's a really cool souvenir. It's a really cool brand, and we've had nothing but good reception. They've led not just our league, but really minor league baseball in terms of merchandise sales and the exploitation of the brand. So they've done a great job. They've come up with, I think, 7 different variations of it in their various logos, and we're really excited about it.
That's one of the things that Brandiose does so well is this sort of larger narrative, this suite of logos that tell a story. Unbelievable views at the ballpark, right? Like you get out there on that sort of third base concourse and you just have these expansive views of the mountains. And I was lucky to go to a game there last summer as part of the road trip with my kids and ran into a whole bunch of other didn't run into, we planned a bunch of Twitter friends, largely only known online, sort of converged at once and met one another. And now we've become real life friends since then. So the Missoula has a place in my heart because it was, first of all, we got to see a double header because the game the night before got canceled. Still no knockout round though. We did not get to see a knockout. We had 2 chances at a knockout round and we didn't get it. So I'll
tell you a quick story about those views though. One is that they still have an Osprey up in the left field fence, sitting up there on that pole. But the second thing is there's a mountain out beyond right field with a giant M painted or carved into it. And they'll tell you it's a 10-minute walk. And take it from me, it's not a 10-minute walk. I think 30 minutes later, I was cursing out the whole front office for suggesting I climb that mountain. But it was a fun experience.
That is a mountain time zone trick right there, right? Like, if something looks like it's right there, but I'll tell you, just driving around Montana and Idaho and Wyoming to get to these games, because I had to get through, there are no Wyoming teams, but I had to drive through Wyoming to get up there to Billings, and just this scenery in the Pioneer League is spectacular. So Pioneer League, of course, now it was a Class A affiliated league, a short season Class A affiliated league. Now it is a Major League Baseball partner league. And as we talked last month, that has freed you up to really innovate and have this league become a really sort of strong representative for technology and baseball, not necessarily in the game itself, but in terms of fan access and that sort of thing. So I know there's a new app. I know that the website has been updated. There's different streaming options. Can you talk about sort of what the league's doing to make itself more accessible to fans?
Absolutely. We had a busy offseason where I basically indulged all of my favorite sports consumption products and tried to merge them into a Pioneer League offering that would be really cool for our fans. So as you guys saw a couple weeks ago, we launched our PBL Roundup weekly Wednesday night show live from Missoula on opening day. We were lucky to score a coup with our host, Joe List, who's a successful comedian, is on there regularly, as is Bill Babese, the former general manager of the Angels, and the Mariners. And the big coup, I think, is Tom Brenneman, who's going to be our weekly play-by-play guy you may recognize from his 30 years with the Cincinnati Reds and the Arizona Diamondbacks. So the 3 of them have meshed well. The idea is almost a roundup of all the games in the league. And we've got cool guests coming. We've got comedy pieces, make it fun, make it interesting. What's actually really been fulfilling about it, we're partnering with the School of Journalism and the School of Sports Management at Syracuse. So the Falk School and Newhouse School have given us a lot of really talented students to help us produce and design and make this something that would be fun for fans of all ages. That's not just fun, but informative. And, it's inside baseball, but it's also a afternoon in the park with your buddies.
Absolutely. Well, and it's so important, right? Because I think it's something that Major League Baseball has gotten sort of wrong. I mean, one of the biggest complaints that people have about baseball is the blackouts, right? As a Phillies fan, if the Phillies are playing against the Rockies, I don't get to see them unless I go to the game, right? And if the Rockies are playing the Phillies in Philadelphia, I have no way to see them. So it's, for the Pioneer League to be saying, okay, we're going to make our game more accessible. We're going to facilitate streaming, and we're going to have this TV show that sounds very exciting. At the time of this recording, I have not seen it yet, but I guarantee you that by the time it has come out, I will have retweeted it and shared it, and certainly watched the first episode there. What about access to? I know that you have a new app. What's the new app going to have for fans?
The new app's going to have a little bit of everything. You'll be able to follow either your favorite team or every team, and it'll have everything you need to follow the game closely from home or in the ballpark. So practical stuff like maps and fan guides, but also it'll have your tickets in it. It'll have the retail store in it. It'll have video highlights, news, rosters, schedule of events that you can push to let you know that the game's coming on or whatever. And what I'm really excited about too, in addition to being able to watch the stream through the app, it has a fan cam. So we're trying to really integrate the fan experience, and we want it to be participatory. So you will be able to take photos and videos of your experience in the park, send them to us to put on the broadcast, put them on social media, give us permission to share it, and really make this a community experience where we're not just running the league, we're facilitating a conversation between the fans, the players, the teams. You talk about the blackouts, and we've kind of gone to the opposite extreme. In addition to the fan cam, we've done a dugout cam, and Missoula actually pioneered this last year, pun intended.
Yeah.
But the initial thinking was, oh, you're going to put a cam in the dugout, you better mute it, because of all the things that baseball players tend to say. And I had the exact opposite thought. Not only take it off of mute, but when the pitcher goes 5 innings, he's going to be at the end of the bench talking to Bill Bavasi and Tom Brenneman about what he saw and what he experienced out there. And it just kind of makes it real accessible. Our players are awesome people who we like to showcase, and all of them are way more fascinating, well-rounded than what you see on the field. So, we thought it'd be cool to get fans access, whether you're that 12-year-old kid that wants to learn about launch angles, or whether you're an MLB scout trying to decide whether to sign a guy. Everybody gets a better look at our players.
I think this is brilliant. I love this. Because I always love the spring training games when they mic up the players, or any other occasion on a national telecast when they mic up the players. But I think they're sort of afraid to do it, right, for interfering with the sanctity of the game. And so I think the idea of hearing directly from the players during a game that's a brilliant idea. I think that gives great insight into the game, and especially you're talking about this sort of younger professional players who are trying to make their way in the game, and it's as a partner league, these are players who are not necessarily signed with major league clubs or in their systems. And so I don't know, I think that perspective on the game is just going to be a ton of fun. So,
and I think it's an exciting opportunity for the players too, because you get to showcase your baseball IQ. It's not just I struck out. It's here's why I was expecting another curveball, and here are the tendencies that I had studied that I was ready for, and this, that, and the other. So it's they get to actually tell the world what the inside of being a professional baseball player. And these guys are really smart guys that see a lot. They might not have whoever's Mike Trout's tools, but they're smart guys that understand the game and are still playing at a very high level.
Oh, I can't wait to hear that. And it might be not the worst idea to have it on a 7-second delay, but other than that, I think it's going to be that's a terrific innovation. So
nothing wrong with a little passion.
Exactly, right. There's nothing wrong with that. Well, Henry, this has been awesome. I mean, I love hearing from you about everything that the league has going on. As I've said previously, I'm a fan of the Pioneer League. The Chuckers had me throw out a first pitch, so it's going to be hard for any Pioneer League team to top that. But of course, I've got now my hometown Owls with a Z, who I have gotten to see in person by the time that this episode drops. And so the work, I'm really enjoying the work that you're doing with the Pioneer League. I appreciate you coming on, and look forward to having you on again when I cover some more Pioneer League teams.
Awesome. The pleasure was mine. And remember, Wednesday nights, about 7 p.m. Mountain Time, we got 5 games and a great conversation with cool guests. So hopefully you'll tune in.
I will absolutely tune in, and I will share it all around on all the socials.
Awesome, Paul. See you soon.
Thank you, Henry.